let's face it, SOC teams are overwhelmed. They're drowning in false positive, manual triage, and there is already a shortage of skilled talent. There is no way traditional tools can keep up with AI powered attacks. We need better solutions. Exaforce just raised $75 million dollars to build the industry's first agentic SOC platform, which is designed to turn detection, investigation, and response into an AI driven end to end process. And joining me today is Ariful Huq, co founder and head of product at Exaforce, to talk about how they are rethinking the SOC platform from the ground up. Arif, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time.
This is the first time you and I are talking, so I would love to know a bit about the history and the story of the company, and also what's the story behind its name?
We started a company 2 years ago. I was at Palo Alto Networks. I met my co-founders. We've known them quite some time. Um, we started ideating around, I would say, February of 2023, February of 2023. And as you can imagine, that's when ChatGPT came out. And we realized that this is a big moment. If we're going to go build a company, it has to have tailwinds. And this is going to be a tailwind that's going to last across multiple verticals and specifically in cyber for quite some time. So we were kind of thinking about what problems to solve. We've been thinking about the fact that in cybersecurity, there's lots of tooling. And we think about, Gen AI's biggest impact. It's not just about tooling. If you think, across any industry today, it's really about productivity and efficacy of human beings. And so we thought about cybersecurity. Where can this be most applicable? It's actually where human capital is largest, and that happens to be in the case of security operations. You have lots of typically manual work involved, and there's analysts and there's human beings, a ton of work being done by human beings. So that was the inception. We picked a moment in time. We knew that there's going to be big impact with Gen AI. What's a big problem to solve in cybersecurity related to productivity, efficacy of human beings, and it was security operations. So yeah, that's a little bit of the story.
Thank you so much for the story and history. As we all know, SOC teams handle threat detection, investigation, response, which also lead to constant overload and burnout. From your perspective, what are the most acute pain points SOC teams face today, which you are trying to address?
Yeah, so there's certainly quite a bit of talk about burnout, and sort of just the mundane nature of the work, right? I mean, if the entire job is to be able to investigate and troubleshoot, and you're just looking at issues, then yeah, certainly that is a big portion of it. I think the things that are sometimes often missed out as well is in operations you need context to make decisions, right? You're getting a detection that comes in. What you're trying to figure out is this normal behavior? Because you're going to get a lot more false positives than you're going to see real true positives, real attacks. That's what the operations team really live for, like investigating real threats. What they really don't like to do is investigate mundane things that happen, which are supposed to be happening, but detections are firing, right? So I think, one of the critical things for us as we kind of thought about building this platform was about context. So if it's a developer for performing actions in your cloud environment, or it's an employee that is perhaps traveling or performing actions that are out of the norm and detections are just firing, it takes an incredible amount of effort to go, ask this individual, look at the information that's available to you, try to figure out what's actually happening, run a bunch of queries. This is the type of work that we certainly want to augment a human with, so that you don't have to perform this sort of analysis, such that this information is available for you right there, so you can now just make a quick decision, or recommendations already made for you, right? So yeah, that's the way I would categorize it. I think there's a lack of context, and generally in operations, people have relied primarily on things like events. some event happened. I think we have to go well beyond that now.
which creates a perfect segue. How is Exaforce addressing those challenges with its first agentic SOC platform, and where do Exabots come into picture?
Yeah. So how we address the problem, we've taken a first principles approach in solving this problem. When we started the company, we thought about looking at these detections that are coming from third-party sources, whether it be from your cloud environment, whether it be from your SIM, and you name it. You've got a bunch of detection sources. Um, what we try to figure out was, could we take these detections, essentially leverage the LLMs to understand the context of these detections, try to figure out how to go about troubleshooting, investigating, using, AI agents. What we realized is the output of these AI agents is as good as the data that you have. And to really get precise and predictable outcomes, you really need to have good understanding of this data. So the AI agents themselves have to really understand what this alert is about, the events behind this alert, context behind it, right? So we within the first year of our company, actually, before we even built our first AI agents, what we started to do was build integrations into the most critical data sources. So your cloud provider, public cloud providers, your SaaS services that are super critical for you, GitHub, Okta, Google Workspace, all of these services. And we started to ingest data that is well beyond event data. It's events, config. In the case of GitHub, it's code context, and we put it all together, right? And we call this our semantic data model. By doing this, we're able to build relationships and figure out answers to important questions, like things like, okay, you have an alert, something fired, say for instance in your cloud environment, and you're asking a very simple question: who performed this action, and what resources were impacted? Uh, you won't believe it's unbelievably hard to answer that question. You may think it's a very simple question because to answer the question of who, typically what happens is in a cloud environment, it's not me, RF, performing an action. It's actually RF assuming an identity and then performing these actions. So now to really figure out who performed this action, you need to kind of figure out who assumed this role and do a bunch of work, right? So that's an example of how we can leverage events, config, put all this data together, build relationships to answer these very simple questions. Because if our belief, as I was mentioning, if we can make these answers easy, the AI agents can use them, right? So yeah, so we started kind of like putting all this data together. We also realized that in order for us to kind of figure out whether something bad is happening in the environment, we need to know what is known good, right? If you see an action being performed and a detection is fired, what we really have to figure out is what is known good behavior in an environment as it relates to this action, as is related to this entity. So we built behavioral modeling as well. And lastly, we leveraged the large language models primarily to figure out what questions to ask and then answer those questions using the data that we have. And the reasoning capabilities come from large language models. So they can essentially take all these answers, figure out, how to reason about it, much like a human does, actually, and then come back with a conclusion, right? So that's kind of the approach we took. It is, I would say, a much more comprehensive approach and an approach kind of relying on data and first principles.
When I was going through the platform, your platform is built on a multi-model AI approach rather than just large language models. Why is that critical for accuracy and reliability when it comes to security decisions?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the question, sort of like, I was leading up to this. This is, what I explained previously, this whole notion of a semantic data model. We put all this data together beyond just events. It's config, code context, and then the behavioral model, and then we talked about the large language model. Those three models make up our multi-model, right? Now, the question you asked is, why is this important? Why is this not just LLMs? Really, it boils down to the question of when you give information to an LLM, it has to be super concise. It has to be very contextual. And that allows it to make very predictable and precise decisions, right? If you feed these LLMs with thousands of events and ask it to reason about this information, it becomes really hard. It's like Swapnil, when you read a book, if you're reading a 100-page book, when you get to the 100th page, you kind of forget what's in your first page, right? You don't have an exact word by word understanding. So what we try to do is essentially make things very concise and contextual. And this is the information that is fed into the LLM for it to make these decisions. And what we found is they can make much more predictable and precise decisions by taking this approach. And so, yes, that's the reason why we've built this multimodal AI engine that goes well beyond LLMs. Yeah.
When it comes to AI, there is a lot of fear that it is going to replace people. A big question that CISOs ask, does this replace my analyst or does it augment them? How do you balance human oversight with AI driven automation?
We certainly think this is a human augmentation a solution, right? If you kind of think about security operations, if you have a mature security operations organization, you likely have analysts. Really, the question the CISO and the operations team are asking is, as my alert volume increases, which will inevitably happen because you're going to add new sources to monitor, new threat vectors come up, the threat landscape increases. So as my alert volume, or what they call alert budget, keeps going up, do I keep hiring more people? Because, the way alert budget is calculated typically is how many humans do I have? How many people do I have? What is the number of alerts that a human can actually investigate in a given day? And you kind of have a rough math, like this is what I can actually handle. No, so as that volume keeps increasing, is the solution to just keep, throwing humans at the problem, or do I make my existing team much more effective, so they can effectively handle the, kind of non-linear growth in your alert volume, and leverage their skill sets to do many other things that are critical to the organization. And I think that is the play, right? As I was mentioning, real threat hunting, real investigations is really what these teams look for. They are not looking to solve mundane problems. So I see that as a critical value add for a mature organization. I think one of the things that's somewhat missed in this discussion also is this notion of leveraging agentic platforms, things that we're building, not just for larger teams, but even small teams. We work with organizations today that are what we would categorize as high growth companies. These are, companies that are a billion plus in valuation, growing tremendously fast. They have a very small security team. They probably have a head of security. They have maybe one or two other people. And then, the question for these organizations is, how do I get a security operations program in place? Because I need to put one in place for monitoring. The business is asking for it. The choices are, do I go and get a SIM, hire an analyst team, build detections, or, do an MDR where I kind of like MSSP kind of cede entire control, or do I actually kind of think about this differently? Do I think about an agentic platform that can augment my existing small team, do a lot of the work for me, and essentially leverage my small team to kind of build this program upfront without the huge upfront headcount and tooling investment. And we see traction there as well. So it's not just about large teams and gaining productivity and efficacy, but it's also very small teams that just need to operate very lean, right?
Yes, you have worked with big players, smaller players. You have already worked with enterprise design partners who have seen 10 times improvements. Can you share what that looks like in practice? Is it fewer false positive? Is it faster MTTR? Is it reduced manual work? How does it impact day-to-day life of those teams?
Yeah, the impact to day-to-day life is really about the amount of work that we do for you, such that you don't have to do this work. And the reflection for that comes typically, as you mentioned, MTTI, mean time to investigate. So the feedback that we get from customers is something that would have taken them an hour plus to investigate, maybe up to 2 hours, takes them minutes to now look at, if it even needs their investigation, right? If it doesn't need their investigation, clearly they can just see the audit. They can have complete visibility into what the agent has done for them, and just dismiss if it's a false positive, right? So it's just the sheer amount of work that's being done for the team. Its ease of use and sort of like barrier to performing investigations. Typically, when you're trying to perform an investigation, say in your cloud environment or your SaaS environment, or be it any environment, you need to have understanding of the data. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to know what to query. And that's typically how these SIMs operate. With our platform, because we've done a tremendous amount of work in enriching this data and then building agents on top of it, these agents can operate in co-pilot mode. So what you literally do is ask questions in natural language. You don't have to have, deep understanding of the data, but you can ask the question that you're trying to answer, and the agent will look through all of this information and come back with a response, right? A simple example of this is, last couple of weeks, I don't know if you've been tracking, there's been a ton of NPM attacks, right? Packages getting compromised, credentials being leaked as a result. Literally, what our customers were doing, and actually our own MDR team, a managed detection response team, was doing, was asking questions in real time, in natural language. They're putting in information in natural language to the prompt saying, hey, there's a known threat vector out there. These are the NPM packages being impacted. Can you tell me, do these things exist in my environment? Do you see these indicators of compromise in my environment? Can you tell me if I'm impacted? And the agent would go out, look for all this information, look for all the relevant data, and come back with a summary, right? This is something that would have taken a tremendous amount of work and skill set, actually, and understanding of the data to do before. But, with solutions like this, it becomes much easier.
Now let's talk about funding. With 75 million in funding, what is the roadmap ahead? Where will you focus to make this vision, your vision, real for large enterprises as well as small enterprises in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, we certainly have a long roadmap. We have a lot of building to do. This is an exciting space. It is a space that is very large. So we will continue to build R&D around our platform. We just started building a ton of response capabilities into the platform, so you can have agentic responses. Like literally, you can build AI agents on the platform, things that you want to perform. So essentially, your own automation agent on the platform that's performing tasks that are specific to your organization based on your data. That's something that we recently kicked off the ground, and we will invest quite heavily in that. We'll make sure that we're a world-class data platform that we can support many integrations. So really being, whether it's for the small teams or for the large teams, if they're looking for a SIM or a data warehouse, this is an area that we will certainly invest in. And we announced MDR, managed detection response. When we started this company, one of the things we took inspiration from was a company like CrowdStrike. They built a great endpoint technology, but they didn't stop there. They actually had a great services play to augment that, because that's the last mile. You really want to help your customer all the way through actually resolving problems. So we actually launched an MDR service as part of this recent launch, and we believe the future of this space is a combination of a platform, a product, and service together with MDR. And I think this goes to the question that you were asking earlier. What happens to humans? Well, we certainly believe humans have a play. They will augment AI technology. They will have oversight, and we can leverage our MDR technology to actually do it much more cost effectively compared to a traditional MSSP MDR, because those are typically heavily reliant on humans. We can actually perform much better at a much lower TCO using our MDR technology. So that is going to be another big investment area for us, right? So yeah, I think we have a long road ahead. This is a large space, so it'll be a combination of R&D, go-to-market, and our MDR team that we'll invest in.
Before we wrap this up, one last question. Many vendors promise automation, but they end up adding complexity or locking. How do you make sure that Exaforce integrates cleanly with existing SOC workflows instead of forcing a rip and replace approach?
Yeah, clearly. I mean, when we're working with larger enterprises and mature SOC organizations, we want to make sure that we integrate well into those environments. And that's certainly something that we've taken into account. So we integrate into your existing SIM to get your detections from if you have an existing SIM. If you've got existing workflow and SOAR kind of tooling that we need to integrate with, certainly that is an integration area for us, integrating into all the various different SOAR tooling. Um, Communications and different types of tooling that you're using. So, for instance, Teams, Slack, all these things that you're integrating, well, we're kind of work is done. We're integrating into these environments. Really, our goal is to be able to solve these problems, do work where it's currently being done, and not have to disrupt your existing workflows, right? So that is a big area of kind of our philosophy. Where required, where we need to build integrations to get the data we need, that is something that we have to do, or else we won't be able to provide the service we do. So the fact that we integrate directly into your data sources to get that information, that's primarily being done to actually help you create better outcomes. And where we can leverage existing data, we will leverage it, right? So that's our philosophy.
Arif, thank you so much. It's quite clear that SOC teams cannot scale people fast enough to keep up with modern threats. Exaforce is betting that an agentic AI-driven approach can finally change that equation. You folks are doing incredible work in this space, so I would love to have you on the show again, but I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Swapnil. Thank you for your time.
And back to audience, thank you for watching and don't forget to like, subscribe and share. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.